And I want to give special appreciation to the president, our 16th president, and the member of the governing council for the opportunity to enlighten our members on the current discourse and to also broaden our knowledge. Today, we will be talking on a very important topic that is of high importance to each and every one of us. It's been the front burner in the last few months, and we have an erudite who will be speaking to us today. The topic for this month is the current fiscal policy and tax reform in Nigeria, the recent development, challenges, and future outlook. And it gives me great pleasure to welcome our seasoned professor, an erudite scholar, in person of Professor Abiola Sani, SAN, FCTR. He is a renowned professor of commercial law from the University of Lagos and currently serves as the Dean of Faculty of Law. He specializes in arbitration, taxation, and commercial law, and also the Lagos State Professor of Tax and Fiscal Matter. He's a key member of the Presidential Committee of Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform and has played an instrumental role in the development and submission of pivotal bill to the National Assembly, tagged the Economic Stabilization Bill. Today, we'll be discussing with us, and I can tell you that it will give us a great insight into the topic of discourse, which is the current fiscal policy and tax reform in Nigeria, the recent development, the challenges, and the future outlook. Good morning, Professor Abiola Sani, SAN. Glad to have you on our program this morning.
Good morning, Sheson. Good morning, my president. Good morning, distinguished professionals and colleagues.
Thank you very much for actually giving us your time this morning. I start on this note. It's going to be an interactive session for the next 30 minutes, and I will open the platform for our members to ask questions that bother them on the topic of discourse. But let me start with this, sir. Can you provide us an overview of the various tax reform in Nigeria? What distinguishes the current reform from the previous one that we have in our country?
All right, thank you very much. In terms of tax reform, we are talking about conscious, intentional, deliberate policy to make a shift that will result in a quantum leap. In terms of modern tax reform, we can trace it to Professor Edozian-led study group on the review of Nigerian tax system. That was in 1992. Then soon after that, another study group was set up, headed by Ijewere. Ijewere-led Modified Value Added Tax Committee, also in 1992, to do some preliminary work on introduction of VAT in Nigeria. After that, we had Professor Dotun Phillips Committee, which came also in 2002, which was 10 years after. And after the Dotun Phillips, we had a study group headed by Sheyi Bickerstead. All this culminated in all the reforms we saw in 2007, including the FRS Establishment Act and all that. So at that stage, it will appear as if Nigeria has decided to reform its tax system not later than 10 years interval. But after 10 years, nothing happened. The then FRS boss, in the person of Ms. Ifeko Omoigu Okauru, set up a committee to start to look at the national tax policy. which was released to the public in 2012. After that policy, there was another revision in 2016, and that tax policy of 2016 recommended a far-reaching tax reform. It said, let us collapse all the taxes into broad-based taxes, and let's do away with nuisance taxes. But that didn't happen. But an aspect of the recommendation of the tax policy happened by introducing the Finance Act every year. So we have had about 4 or 5 Finance Acts now, but we have seen that they are just amending the tax law, no major shift. Finally, President Ahmed Bola Tinubu set up the Taiwo Oyedele's committee, of which I'm a member. And then the whole idea is, let us now do something major in order to address institutional challenges and then reposition the tax system. In terms of how this is different, it's different even from the coverage alone. Yeah, the coverage. Apart from amending tax law, the focus of this is, one, to address the fiscal challenges, which we all know is almost at all-time low. If you look at the impact of inflation on what we are generating. So we need to reposition the tax system to generate much more revenue. So we are not talking about just a token increment, but significant revenue increase. And here, the attempt is to ramp up everything that can bring in all the revenue from the major taxes, rather than having small pockets of taxes. So fiscalization, leveraging technology is key. Then the focus is to warehouse all the federal taxes into a single legislation. So we are now going to have Nigerian tax law. The Nigerian tax law, where you know how many taxes we have in Nigeria, and then you have the legislative framework for it in terms of imposition. And also warehouse all the administrative provision in only one statute. This is to avoid.
Let me butt in there, sir. It's a great overview from where we started from, and bringing us to where we are currently, to actually have a paradigm shift in terms of giving the best to the people and also generating greater revenue. Let me, from your last statement, go to this next question, which I know you can actually link to it. That considering the challenges faced by businesses, especially the MSME, that's the medium, small enterprises, and the low earner, due to multiple taxes. I know your chairman and our own friend Taiwo Oyedele always speak to this. The public is hopeful for an end to this issue. Can you give a deep insight for our members what this proposed new tax bill tends to address in the consolidation of these multiple taxation? I know you're an advocate of it. I've listened to you on different fora. Taiwo is always an advocate of this. Can you take us in on what this new tax reform we address, most especially in the area of the medium, small enterprise and the low income earner?
Well, one of the thrust of the reform is to enable businesses. Well, for big businesses, there are even challenges in terms of compliance. You can then imagine the headache or the burden on small businesses. Ahead of the tax bill, there was Withholding Tax Regulation 2024, which exempt small businesses from withholding tax obligation. Because most of them, when they are setting out, they are not aware of this obligation. And as soon as they become fairly established, they are confronted with back duty assessment, which make most of them to either go under or just to forget about the business or start settling and all that. So that is a huge advantage as far as small and medium-sized businesses are concerned. Now, in terms of the law itself, there's a zero CIT for businesses whose turnover is not more than 50 million. And then the House of Representative Finance Committee had even increased it to 100 million. And what effect is this likely to have? Is going to allow businesses to settle and grow. In Ghana, they have a concept that they call tax farming. They are saying that allow businesses to grow like you allow crops and trees to grow before you start harvesting. And I don't think we have had we have had a more deliberate attempt to use fiscal policy, tax policy to enable businesses more than the current one. Right now, all the bureaucratic requirements in terms of even TCC as a precondition to do business, I just hope that some of these are not overturned by the National Assembly. I mean, in terms of doing business, anything that will enable businesses to grow, you find in the bill. Okay? And the rates for small businesses, 0. And if you look at individual, the threshold for personal income tax now is 800,000 naira. It means those who are earning minimum wage and below have no tax obligation. We have never had this good. And I just hope that the pushback from some stakeholders who feel that this is too generous will not cause a reversal. Because if you look at the data, most of the revenue come from those who are in the upper income bracket and those who are in the multinationals and the big companies. So while we then focusing on the small businesses, we will track them. They have obligation to file returns. So if a small business becomes a unicorn tomorrow, then it will also contribute. Or as soon as the turnover crosses the threshold, it becomes tax. The obligation to pay tax kicks in. So generally, I don't think we have had any shift that targets those who have the broadest shoulder to carry the heaviest burden, as the national tax policy prescribes. But in terms of multiplicity of taxes, I think we need to do much more at the subnational level in particular. Bear in mind that the current initiative is at the federal level. Some of these nuisance taxes are at the lower level, which are within the control or competence of the states. The committee had done what it could do by introducing a development levy to compensate the states and the local government for all these small nuisance taxes. Whether this will actually achieve that objective, we still have to wait and see. But you remember that the committee does not have limitless power. It can only work within the confine of its mandate, which it has done by proposing a development levy of 4%. The expectation is that by the time they are distributed, the states and the local government will be encouraged to do away with double taxation. For example, now, the expectation is that we will not have concurrently VAT and consumption tax in any state. So if wishes were horses, as they say, beggars will ride.
Right.
So let's see whether we'll get the buy-in of the subnational in the real sense, because the politicians have their own objectives for allowing the non-stakeholder to act the way they are acting, which is most unfortunate. So if they buy into the vision of sanitizing the environment, we will be able to deal satisfactorily with multiplicity of taxes. Then finally, in terms of multiplicity of taxes, what I think will address it really is to have an agency that approves any fees or any charges by any agencies of government before they roll it out. Because what you have is a situation where agencies that are underfunded will find a way to introduce some levies into the law establishing them, or hike the administrative fees. If I want to register my title now, and I need it desperately, if it costs 30% or 40%, I may not have a choice than to do it. But let government at federal and at local, at state, set up agency to approve before they roll out. In the school where I teach, we cannot just charge students for ID card, for certain things, for transcript, unless the council approves. So if the council sees that we want to charge an amount for transcript that is a percentage of the tuition, I'm sure no reasonable council will approve it. So if we ramp things up at different level, at the federal, at the state and the local government, we may be able to satisfactorily address the intractable problem of multiplicity. If we assume, it's only at a level of government, that is not going to help. We have it at the federal, we have it at the state, we have it at the local government.
It is seriously across the board.
And just a minute, with the local government autonomy, now, if more money goes into that space, there is no reason why the lawlessness arising out of desperation to get money should continue if the revenue is well managed.
He insists you can only get this from a professor and erudite scholar who has contributed immensely to tax policy in our nation. And if you are just joining us, I've actually been having a chat with Professor Abiola Soni, who has been talking to us on the current fiscal policy and tax reform, the recent development, the challenges, and the future outlook, and a very deep insight. A lot of us have confidence in the Presidential Tax Force Committee because we know your advocacy and you are part of us. And looking at some of the things that you have actually suggested in enabling the business environment, we hope that those that are having the pushback, because we know it's the elites too that will consider that the president said let the masses breathe, and the masses are the common men like people like us, and you are the one advocating for us. But I believe
that's incorrect. You are not part of the masses. I'm not. No professional that is what is sought can claim to be part of the masses. We all must do our own part as well. Yeah.
Okay. Not a problem.
Even your bow tie has betrayed you.
Well, Professor Sodi, you have actually brought me out this morning. But let me proceed with this next question. And for those that are just joining us, I've been talking to Professor Abiola Soni, SAN, FCTI, a renowned lecturer. He's been giving it to us the way it should be. Sir, tax evasion and avoidance is something that has actually been a challenge to the tax administrator. I want to ask, this new tax reform, do we have specific provisions that directly target this issue of tax evasion and tax avoidance on the part at which we are actually having it?
In terms of tax evasion, you have two major approaches. The first one is specific anti-avoidance provisions. So if there are specific loopholes being exploited by taxpayers, attempt will be made to plug it, and that has been done across the different type of taxes under the Nigerian tax law bill. The second one is general anti-avoidance power. That is the power given to the tax authority to disregard artificial transaction and all that. But beyond that, fiscalization, that is leveraging technology, holds the key. Because a lot of people will hide what they earn if they can. The idea is to link up all the existing data, either BVN, TIN, NIN, in such a way that all the taxable activities can be tracked. Because the assumption that people will do it voluntarily may be theoretically good. But what happens if they don't? If a taxpayer, whether a company or an individual, is confronted with certain facts, I'm not suggesting that taxpayers are like robbers or thieves now. So if the police or the security agencies confront an accused with certain facts, the accused may then be faced with the option of either confessing or owning up. So there are ways the new or the proposed regime will make evasion difficult. And this is also going to be more difficult because it is envisaged that there will be collaborations between tax agencies. And that is one of the reasons why the JTB is being reformed. If you claim you are not resident in a particular state and data is available to all other states, eventually you'll be located to one state where all your taxable activities will be subjected to tax. Even if you claim that you are not liable to tax in Nigeria, the tax authority that is being repositioned now should be able to also track income even across the Nigerian space. So in terms of evasion, people should get ready, and then this, in my view, will then make people to demand for accountability and transparency. Because when you see your tax bill going up, and then you'll be wondering, what is government doing with the revenue it is collecting? Then all of you can also put a pressure on government to take care more of the poor, who often trouble the middle class and the rich for palliatives. So if government gets more money and is able to also use it to benefit the people, create more safety nets, I think there will also be lesser pressure on you and I, especially those who are very rich.
That's a brilliant submission, and I picked the word collaboration, which I think currently will lack. But with the current reform going on with JTB, I'm sure there will be consolidation between the federal and the state, because a lot of people hide when the federal are coming, they hide under the state. When the state are coming, they hide under the federal. So if there is collaboration and you have consolidation of the BVN, NIN, we can track it to you. So the one that is not going to the state, you cannot take that out. But I want to go to this next area of questions. Speaking to the revenue sharing, we know it generated a lot of argument, very contentious one at that particular time. But we understand that the National Assembly is actually working on this and looking at area of balancing it and progressively have a way of fulfilling that which the committee is suggesting. We want to ask that if on the long run this bill is passed, how do you foresee the subnational complying and having a good integration with the whole thing for future performance.
Okay, now revenue generation is always problematic. And I can assure you that we will never arrive at a formula that will satisfy everyone. So yes, it's not going to. Those who are having more may even be the one to complain more. But let us be clear about this. The Taiwo Yedele Committee saw a problem and it was trying to address it in terms of equity, which was commendable. But the whole thing was misunderstood. People initially thought there was nothing in the bill about attribution and that you are just going to take all the money and give it to the state where the tax is being remitted, so which we call the headquarter effect. But by the time they saw clause 22, paragraph 11, they saw that at least there is an intention to attribute, because that provision is saying when taxpayer is filing, even based on headquarter, it should provide a schedule of where those payments are coming from. What that showed was people will be more vigilant, especially as the revenue goes up, and everybody will try to see that it is not being shortchanged. So in terms of equity, the awareness of the states and the local government will be higher, and they are going to make sure that they police and keep the gate in such a way that there is no leakage. Now, whether they are now satisfied ultimately is what we have to watch out for, because there will be some fallout. A state that seems happy today may feel shortchanged at the end of the day. For example, there is a lot of sacrifice on the part of Lagos State in terms of the new proposal. So whether Lagos will keep quiet the way it has done so far is something we have to wait and see. But bear in mind, once it's like a partnership. Even if all of you are angels, when it comes to distribution, some people will claim that, oh, I did more than Chesson. Why is Chesson sharing the same amount? The allegation could be true, it could be false. But my expectation is that at some point, we should be able to drive all this with data, and so that people can see it. And then if people see the basis of distribution and there are genuine reasons to address them, then they will bring it to the table. But we should bear in mind that without cooperation, we can never even aim at achieving efficiency. We will always collect far less, and a state going it all alone can never be efficient. So if we try that for some taxes, states may actually not be able to generate what they are receiving now from the federal allocation. So collaboration is key. And once the institution is strengthened in terms of repositioning the JTB, that will be renamed Joint Revenue Board. And then people have representatives there and they are getting all the support from their governor. So the revenue can only go up, and not just go up, but significantly.
Sincerely speaking, you said it
significantly.
Yeah. Collaboration, cooperation among the different cadre, it's very, very key and very, very fundamental if we must make progress in terms of our tax reform. Before I open the platform for questions from our viewers, I want to ask this question that the goal for Nigerian fiscal landscape is to reach 18% tax to GDP by 2026. Is around the corner. How optimistic are you about achieving this target with the current reform, especially given the implementation challenge faced by tax administrators?
Well, I do not have the numbers, but I'm sure the report of the committee will show all this ultimately when it is available to the public. But what I can tell is that if you want to do something about your tax to GDP ratio, You have to ensure that you do most of what you are doing now, ensure that you broaden the tax base, especially among those who are able to pay more, and also get the rate right. A lot of people misconstrue the proposed increment of VAT. Because if you are trying to do all the reform that the uh, committee had recommended, you want to make sure that businesses get their input VAT as a when due, even without waiting for any audit and all that. So the rate may not be sustainable. Okay, if you look at countries with higher contribution to GDP, they are doing everything that we are recommending, and they've been doing them for 30, 40 years. And their rate is also quite high. But are Nigerians ready for a rate increase? I personally am not, because it will appear that generating more revenue for government in Nigeria will not necessarily result into, value creation or into improvement of welfare. Because people will ask, all this money that governments are getting at all levels, to what extent are they applying them for the good of the people? So the reform had put in a tax policy to even guide spending. But to what extent will this actually restrain the politicians in terms of funding, in terms of appropriation and all that? So ultimately, if we are serious about improvement of our tax to GDP ratio, we must do most of what we are doing. And at some point, also fix the tax rate. Because our tax cannot be the lowest in the world, especially VAT, and then we have lesser people in the tax net. And then you hope to do something significantly about tax to GDP ratio. Then this business enablement must also be very strong, because if you are able to attract the right investment, the CIT contribution will also go up, the VAT will go up. But in terms of reliable data, we need to wait and see. And there are experts who are in a position to actually do that. And my expectation is that one day we'll be able to get data that will reliably give us an indication of where we are, because you see different data from different sources. So we must be able to actually measure our tax to GDP ratio and say this is what it is.
So the period at which we are is to yield the floor to our members to ask questions. And I can see Ismaila Adewale. Ismaila Adewale, can you unmute yourself and ask your questions? Ismaila Adewale, please, can you unmute and ask your questions?
Thank you so much. Hello. Do you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you, Prof. I thank you for your presentation. Let me quickly ask my question, because so many people are also hearing to ask questions. And thank you for your work, the committee, Taiwo Oyedele committee, for which Professor San is also part of. You've talked enormously about taxation, which is one aspect of the fiscal policy. You've done a lot of work on how to raise revenue for government through taxation. But I've not had the committee talk so much on the other aspect of fiscal policy, government expenditure. Government expenditure. By the time government make all this money through your recommendation, then are they good? I know the constitution has specified how government should spend money through budgeting and all those kind of things. But what I'm hearing from the people are not happy with the way government spend. There are a lot of looting and stealing and misappropriation, no accountability. And this is what is drawing people back from declaring their income to pay taxation. Is it possible for the committee to also look at government expenditure? How to recommend an amendment to constitution to prevent looting and stealing.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
Mr.
Let me stop
Ismaila,
there.
I think we can get that question so that we can give room for others to ask their question. Thank you. Umar. No, Usman. Can you unmute and ask your question, please?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me, sir?
Proceed. We can hear you very well.
The axe I have to grind is about those businesses that are registered as business names. I think they are the lowest rung of the economic ladder, and they are those that should be helped to grow. But much to my disappointment, I discovered that the Act has exempted businesses, limited liability companies earning up to 50 million naira for not to pay VAT and not to pay tax. For example, my practice, I make 7 million naira per annum, and I am forced to pay VAT and also to pay tax. So I think there is inequity, and equity is one of the cardinal principles of taxation. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Can we have Kamaruddin ask your question? Please, let's make it snappy. I can see a lot of people engaging. Prof. Kamaruddin, please ask your question.
Okay, thank you, sir. Good morning, sir, and good morning, Prof. My question will be on incentive for free zone enterprises. I'm speaking about NEBZA and OXA, and thank God our speaker today is a son. So the free zone enterprises operating in Nigeria, before they came, they have a kind of incentives packaged by the federal government of Nigeria, and this is enacted in their hearts, in their respective act, like a NEBZA Act of 1992 and the OXA Act of 1996. Now that the introduction of the new tax bill is going to remove all these incentives and introduce CIT into the enterprises operating the free zone. So that I want our speaker today to answer, to respond to what is likely to be the legal implication of this. That I'm foreseeing that there's going to be a lot of litigation against the federal government of Nigeria, and we all know the implication of this. That is my question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kamaruddin. Can we have Mr. Shei ask his question, please? Mr. Shei, please go ahead and ask your question.
Good morning, Prof. Good morning, the moderator. How are you? You are hearing me?
Very well. Proceed with your question, sir.
All right, Prof. My question had to do with multiple taxation. I think it's one of the major challenges of payment of tax by taxpayers. What has your committee done to ensure that multiple taxation is eliminated, and then everybody will now know that you are paying this particular tax, and that takes care of your tax liability? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Although he addressed that while we were talking, but he will address it again. Dr. Alphonsus, can you please ask your question? Dr. Alphonsus. Okay, can we have a Lola Ogidingbe? Lola, can you ask your question? Please unmute, Lola.
I've done that.
Okay, go ahead.
I've done that.
Go ahead, we can hear you. Ask your question.
Okay. Yeah. Good morning, my lecturer, Professor Abiola Soni. Good morning, the moderator.
Thank you.
Yeah. So my questions are: one, we have professionals that are into practice in Osun, Lagos, Ogun, and what have you. And all these different states, we want you to be paying for tax, whatever, to get there before you can register. Assuming I'm living in Lagos and I have to do business in Oyo, Osun, or what have you, am I going to be paying, what do they call it, tax in that particular office again? Because if you are talking of giving SME to breathe, I think professional to an extent should fall within this one, so that at the end of the day, even the job they will give might not be anything, but they will force you to pay for tax before they give you their tax clearance or tax whatever. That is one. Secondly, Prof, this question might be outside this lecture per se, but I just want your input. Is it right for any institute to be charging a professional to pay on yearly basis on license issued to practice? I'm an accountant, I'm a lawyer. I belong to CITN. So if I've done my exam, I've passed, they've issued me license, I pay my yearly subscription. Now, is it right for this body to be asking me to pay for renewal of license?
That is noted. So that we can give room for others, I'll take just those two questions.
The third one, please.
No, I won't be able to take the third question. Please pardon me, ma, so that we can allow it to go around. Can we have Obi Anoye? Please unmute and ask your question. Obi, please unmute and ask your question. And let's make it brief.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, and thank you so much, my professor who made me to study law. My first question is, at the inception of the reform committee's work, we thought that those non-government actors who collect taxes by extortion, I mean MC Oluomos, hypothetically, all over this country, Onitsha, Aba, Lagos, everywhere. Each bus pays up to 4,000 every day, or 8,000, between 4,000 to 8,000. I thought this reform committee was going to abolish that completely. These people are not governments. That's one. The next one I want to ask Charlie is Financial Reporting Council is charging some money based on turnover, yes, turnover. I am asking, do they want to compete with financial FIRS in revenue collection? Are there no regulators? Regulators are not supposed to raise revenue. Otherwise, we'll be looking at capture, regulatory capture. Shouldn't they have leave that to tax people? Why are they asking for charging money based on turnover?
Thank you very much, Mr. Obi. And I'll take two more so that I can give the room for Prof because our time is fast spent. Let me have testimony. Testimony to your right here. Please unmute and speak. Testimony, can you unmute and speak? Testimony, please unmute and speak. Okay, that is gone. Can we have Okoro? Okoro, please unmute and speak.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. Please proceed with your question.
Good afternoon. Sorry, I don't think we need to follow exactly in a strict sense what happens in other countries. Something like VAT, you know, it's disgraceful that we are charging VAT on basic food items like milk that everybody needs. In these difficult times, a tin of milk is how much? Why don't we treat VAT like more like a luxury tax, so that we tax the areas that we need to tax, and even if only do it for 20% or 15%, where you will have ease of collection instead of taxing it all the way down. So I don't know if that is not if that is possible. Why don't we look at it from that point, from that angle? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. May I at this point just state that every one of us that we are raising up with hands, can we please drop our question in the chat box? I'll take it up, share with Prof. He will respond. And when we are sharing the slide and the link, we'll definitely put those deliverables to it, because that is the reason I'm asking every month for sponsorship, and I will get to that. Prof, let me give you the next few 10 minutes sir, before I yield the floor, I cannot but recognize our revered past president. Please unmute Prince Adekunle Quadri to ask his question before I yield the floor to Professor Sonny for his question, for response to the questions.
Yeah,
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, for giving me that privilege. Yeah, I have, okay, my appreciation goes to Professor Sonny, my very good friend. I have just two questions, you know. The first one has to do with professionalism. When it comes to professionalism in the tax system, how well has the bills taken care of this? That's my first question. The second question is the issue of a shift from direct taxation to indirect taxation. Given the fact that a lot of concessions have been granted to individuals, companies, and whatever, and looking at the fact that this House of Reps have already jettisoned the idea of increasing VAT rates. So what are the other options that we have available? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, our revered past president. I give the floor to you, Professor Sonny, if you can do this within 10 minutes.
All right, thank you very much. The first question by Ismaila Adewale, I spoke to it. If we generate triple of what we are making now, and then government does not spend them in terms of what matters most to the people, it will be like money going down the drain. So, but bear in mind the limit of the power of those who are reforming the tax system. It's like FRS, LRS, they can only collect. Allocation is a function for the executive, for those who are there. And I'm happy you mentioned that there are even constitutional framework. So if you put something in the Constitution to ensure accountability, and yet you are not getting as much accountability, it means the problem is deeper. It has to do with leadership, okay? So we need to hold government accountable, and it's easier said than done. We need to be watchful about who gets to power. And when people are paying more, the assumption is that they will pay more attention to all this. But it's not going to come very easy, because somebody spoke about state capture and all that, and that is what we have at the moment. Now, in terms of exemption of certain businesses, this reform aims at achieving equity. If we are not making enough to even survive, then why impose additional burden? But remember, there's still the requirement to file. If you're filing at any point shows that you are above the threshold, that means the tax authority can then ask you to come and start fulfilling your obligation. And I think that is fair enough. So if what you earn is not more than what you have stated, 7 million, you are under the threshold. And our prayer is that you get bigger and also enter the tax net. Then Kamaruddin mentioned about free trade zone, and he was talking about litigation. Well, if you are not happy with anything government is doing or has done, there is access to court under Section 6 of the Constitution. Okay, if the stakeholders feel that what the reform is against an existing law, they are free to approach the court. But what I can tell you is that there is no reversal or abolition of the exemption under this respective law. Rather, what the reform aim at addressing are the abuses. So when you talk about free trade zone, and then you are having free trade zone in Ojota, you are having free trade zone in Apapa. I had a very ugly experience where I was providing training for a tier 1 law firm. And they told me about 20 years ago that hotels are getting pioneer status. And I said, oh, it's not in the law. I came across as somebody who was theoretical. So there have been lots of abuses free trade zone are geared towards export. So when they sell and compete with those who are also selling inside, and they get unfavorable advantages, the question is that should that continue? So that, in my view, is what the reform aims at addressing, and not reversing or rolling back the provisions in the law. Dangote refinery was set up to crop certain advantages. And I don't see, if Dangote refinery is doing what it should do, we just add that it's exporting jet fuel to. So why should anybody roll back those tax exemption? So, and I want you to correct me if I'm wrong. So if there's litigation, it will be fought on the basis of, and then the expectation is that justice will be done. Then Sheyi, on multiplicity of taxes, like Sheson said, I've already addressed that. One thing that is important or paramount in taxation is people must know the extent of their financial exposure. So once I pay, people should not come to me and say, pay for education under tertiary education special tax or levy. Pay for technology under NIDA levy. Yeah. Or pay for a revamping of our engineering. If we want to go to space, that money should come from, the money we have already contributed. And I said that, look, we are now going to be certain about how many taxes we have at the federal level. And they are not more than 8 at the moment. So anything beside that is not a tax, even if it is masquerading as one. And when we are addressing them, let me reiterate what I've recommended in my writing. They are not multiplicity of taxes. They are abuse of regulatory power. If I have the power to regulate certain things, and then I also have the power to prescribe charges, I'm now asking for a arm and a leg. It's like asking us to pay for voters' card or even NIN, and then you cannot do anything without them. So they become something like tax. They are not taxes. They are not taxes. They are just abuses of regulatory power. So, and I pray that nomenclature can change. So, Lola Ogedengbe, we can talk about the third question which you couldn't ask, because we are connected, kind of. So, registration in different states, that should really not happen if it has to do with taxes. There is only one personal income tax, and once you get your tax clearance, it's like having to have different plate numbers if you are crossing states. Maybe what you mean to say is maybe registration, maybe with PPP, with Bureau of Public and Public-Private Partnership of different states. If your firm is not registered, they are not likely to give you work. And again, if the rate is fair and it is not arbitrary, most professionals will be happy to pay without batting any eyelid. But once it is becoming very huge, it becomes a burden. Okay, and if the rates are already high, I think the various states should look at it and review it downward. And I think KPBN can also take up this challenge and talk to the states. Then yearly, the Obi and Anoye, non-state actors, the power to stop people and ask them to pay is a power that only government should exercise. It's an attribute of sovereignty, and say pay. You can't just stop me if you are not a policeman. But the people that are stopping others, they have the backing of people in power, especially governors and also those the chairman of the various local governments. If the governors want to stop all those nonsense today, they don't even need to issue circular, because they see it as a way of empowering those people who are offering them unique services at different times. So, but it's a total aberration which we allow only in the jungle. Our constitution gives local government power to control motor parks and all that. Why will any state actor be controlling those areas? So we have a collapse of governance, unfortunately, where it matters most. Where we should feel government most, because that is where things that affect us take place. But government or political actors have ceded to non-political actors for reasons that we all know. And unless we reform governance at that level, we will be complaining from morning till night and nothing will happen. On Financial Reporting Council is a total aberration. I refer you to the case of Eco Hotel and the Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria. My firm handled that case. Eco Hotel was my client. And then we went to court, and then the Federal High Court struck out that power. They said, you have no such power, especially in respect of private enterprises. It's all in the drive for revenue. So the guy who was there a while ago, we have forgotten him now, who was acting God, is the one who introduced all this. It was in our faces. I can't even remember his name now. All he wanted was to just reposition Financial Reporting Council. Who knew Financial Reporting Council before now? Then they wanted to start controlling churches, remove GO, then make lots of money, but it's not sustainable. And I'm happy that the Ministry of Trade, under the headship of Dr. Jumoke Oduwole, recently, as in last week, called them to order, and I think they asked them to stop. Because this is somebody who has a very good appreciation of enabling businesses. What they are asking companies to pay, some of them don't pay a CIT, and I want you to check. Then what are they using the money for? So they are exercising taxing power, which they have no power to exercise. And I've just told you that Eco Hotel went to court and then got a judgment against them. So Obina Okoro, you also spoke about basic food. It depends on the definition of basic food. You regarded milk as basic food. I regard it as basic food. But our tax law at the moment does not regard it as basic food. I regard biscuit as basic food. I have a client who manufactures biscuit and who cannot make sense out of, he said, this is what students take to school if they cannot afford. Our tax law presently does not regard it so. So I think we need to revisit what we regard as basic food. And bear in mind, Obina, what is in the law is not even basic food, but basic food item, which if you interpret narrowly, does not even cover basic food. It means item that goes into making of the food,
Basic food,
not the food itself. So this is an area where we may need to expand the assumption that, oh, it's only the rich who take. I think we should temper it. We should temper it. We should temper it. We even want to be taxing water. You know, one spring case, they had to go to court and say, look, you cannot impose VAT on water, and they won. Because the courts who we interpret all this, we also, they are also taxpayer. So this is an area where I think we can review. And we have this convoluted definition, even in the definition which, unless you open book now, you'll be checking book. It has now become like like a custom code. You'll be checking whether this code, I think we can simplify this aspect, honestly. So Obina, I agree entirely with you in that regard. Then Prince Kodri, the last question. Professionalism. I guess you are talking about this requirement that FRS should have power to now determine who will sign. Look, judges complain of low quality of lawyers, especially those who are not trained in UNILAG. They say, oh, the standard is going down. So if the judges now say, before you appear in our court, we want to certify you, have they done what they are supposed to do? If there are challenges in terms of quality, I think there can be collaboration with professional bodies. We cannot say CITN is bad, ICANN is bad, ANAN is bad, and then say we'll vest FRS with the power to now take additional body of screening. I think we can collaborate in this regard. I don't see how it will work. You know, if that is what you mean. I do not know exactly whether, and I sense that CITN will also must be ready to protect its charter. So at the point when this was being debated, I voiced my dissension clearly, and I said that we will meet in court. So if this is what you mean, that is my position on that. Then on the shift from direct to indirect taxes. I don't think we should shift from anywhere. We are not getting enough from either direct or indirect. We are not getting enough from direct taxes. Personal income tax in Nigeria now generates much less. Why? Because the principal collector are the states. And income is porous. Income will escape from one state to the other. If you do not have cooperation that I spoke to, somebody will say he's not resident in state A just to avoid paying in that state, and he will still not pay to state B. So you have double non-taxation. And even when you are able to catch them, they will say, oh, I'm not resident in Nigeria. And then their income kept outside Nigeria. There's no way any state can reach them. So you must have synergy between the federal and the state, and even the international bodies, in order to follow all the money and make sure that people get. So it's a deception. It's a wooden lie that we have carried from the first reform up till now. And I think what we should do is to focus on each tax type and make sure that we get as much as possible on them, fairly, squarely, efficiently, without imposing unnecessary burden on the people.
It's been a very quality and insightful time engaging Professor Abiola. I'm excited to give a program today because we have a slight technical issue, and I need to well that my guest is actually out there to make the best out of it. I want to say a very big thank you to you, Professor Abiola Sonny. You are always there to give us the in-depth of anything you want to call knowledge-based all the time. And I cannot say that if you call you next time, you will not. You will always make yourself available to us and to all our viewers across the globe. We want to say a very big thank you to you for making our time to always joining us every fourth Thursday of the month to have an in-depth into more knowledge and discussion that we are always having. To our president and the governing council, we acknowledge this knowledge sharing platform that you have given to us to develop our members.
Sheson?
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Okay, there is a question by Ismaila Adewole. He said on fiscal policy. Now, this committee, the Taiwo Yedede committee, had thought about spending and actually come up with national fiscal policy, not national tax policy, for fair taxation, responsible borrowing, and sustainable spending. This was actually the subcommittee that I headed. And this is not thinking only about generating, but how to spend. But the worry is whether the political actors will be guided by this. Because if the conscience cannot restrain them, then what will? But in any case, we have done what we can. Taiwo Oyedele has done what he can to move the needle. Let's see whether all stakeholders will also do their own part.
Very beautiful way to very beautiful way to bring the program to their beef. Let's wait whether the other stakeholders will contribute their own quota to move our country forward. Once again, until we come your way in the month of May, prepare to participate in every activities of the Institute. I remain your host, Olusesan Okwade, FCTI. Bye for now.